Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you hear me well? Can you hear me? Great. Can you see me? Okay, now I will share my presentation with you. You can hear me? Can you hear me well? Can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Can you hear me once again? Okay, great. You can just see me or you can just hear me. Mohammed, what can you see or just see, not hear me? Now it's fine. Great. I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know if you see me well, the screen as well. Can you see the screen well? You see the screen? Great. So today we're on day 3 of online training course by European Confederation of Youth Clubs, where we'll talk about the youth work and the role of youth work in prevention of violent extremism and also radicalization. I would like to introduce myself shortly. My name is Maria Majidova. I'm Secretary General of National Youth Council, or NIORA, if you want to know the acronym. I've been in part of youth work for, yes, I shared. Yeah, I've been part of youth work for the last 7 years. And I've traveled to around 37 countries, and I'm at the age of 24 right now. I've been, let's say, victim of extremism and also radicalization, based on ethnical or some religious basis. But in total, I would say that this topic has a great impact, I think, for society in terms of actuality, because it's really actual right now. And as you can notice from the media and from the news and also from our daily lives, that radical extremism is growing and we need to do something about it. So I really hope that I'll try to cover my part of this model for today, and tomorrow we'll continue more about the resilience and empowerment of young people. So first of all, who is youth actually? Youth, who is youth and who is a youth worker? There is no, there's a different definitions of youth actually, and every country has a separate or different age range for their young people. In my country, it's 1629, but in different countries, the figures are different. United Nations define youth from the range of 15 to 24. In Council of Europe, there is no concrete range. From country to country, it differs. For example, in Asian countries, you can find even some people, some countries who define young youth as 45-year-old or even 40-year-old. And in Russia, it's 35, and some other countries, it has a different range. So what is youth? Youth is best understood as a period of transition from dependence of childhood to adulthood independence. So that's why sometimes people actually have difficulties in identifying what is the range. Yes, so that's why it's easier to identify this age group when it comes to employment and education, because youth is often referred to a person between the age of leaving compulsory education and finding their first job. So you won't find a person, of course, you can find it in some still developing countries working at the age of 13, 15, etc. But in most of the countries, it's illegal, child labor. But that's why I mentioned finding the first job as a first, opportunity, employment opportunity at this age, between in most countries 15 until 30. And what is youth work? Youth work is a broad term covering a broad scope of activities of a social, cultural, educational, and political nature, with and for young people. And increasingly, such activities also include sport and services for young people. So it's not just what we do, like trainings or online courses or campaigns. It also includes sport and other services for young people. The youth work is always for young people and with young people. Sometimes youth work can be done not by young people. So it's okay, maybe if you are 50 or 60, but you are still part of youth work, there's no problem with that. You can be a youth worker and you can be 50 years old, you can be 60 years old, doesn't matter. Your work should be connected to young people and should be for young people. So youth work belongs to the area of out-of-school education, as well as specific leisure time activities managed by professional or voluntary youth workers and youth leaders. So it's out of school, meaning it's out of formal education. So it's youth work is mainly non-formal education and formal education at institutions. If you are, for example, studying youth work at academic level, then maybe it can be considered. But Usually youth work is something out of school and out of university. So youth work is organized in different way, but usually organized by NGOs or youth organization, by informal groups, or through youth services and public authorities. It's delivered in different forms and settings. It can be an open access, it can be group based, it can be campaign program based, it can be outreach and detached. And it's given shape at local, regional, national, European level, if we talk about Europe now, or on the international level. So I would like you to give an example of basically what youth work looks like in a nutshell. So youth work offers young people meaningful activities based on young persons' needs and interests. And key features of the methods used by youth work are non-formal and formal and informal learning, participatory and experience pedagogy, relationship-based activities, learning as a social activity with others, and mentoring or peer support. As I mentioned before, youth work is mainly about non-formal and informal learning. And this has to be voluntary, it has to be participatory. All participants of your learning or participants of your organization, doesn't matter, decision making, needs to have a voice, need to have a say. Only in that case it can be participatory. That's why youth work is always based on democratic approach, and everyone has a word and everyone has a voice. And yes, it's relationship based activities. You have to work with others. You are in public all the time. You work with a lot of people. You need to build relationships in order to achieve some things, in order to have a result in youth work. It can be relationship with stakeholders. It can be relationship with participants of your project or your campaign or your training. And of course, it has to have mentoring and peer support. Next cluster is youth work aims at young person's personal development. In particular, it leads to self-determination, self-confidence, self-esteem, and socialization. I would say that these particularly self-determination and self-confidence played a particular role in my career and especially in my development, because through youth work, young people and youth workers, if we're talking about youth workers right now, can discover what they like to do in life, what they actually enjoy, what make their heart sing. And of course, it builds self-confidence and builds self-esteem when you are really, really keen on what you are doing and you really believe on what you are doing. And of course, youth work leads to socialization, because you work with people, you network with people. Your result is actually depends on a lot of stakeholders, because alone a young person or youth worker cannot achieve anything. In youth work, one of the main success stories are based on the networking. You need to know people, you need to know a lot of colleagues, not only in your country, but also abroad. That's how you can push things to be done. And then the personal development leads to empowerment, emancipation, tolerance, and responsibility. Of course, when you are when you feel that you are confident and you feel that you are determined, it leads to empowerment. You get motivation, you develop tolerance, you become responsible for your own actions, and you also start to involve as many people as possible around you, and you empower others. And then the result is participation in democratic societies, prevention of risk behavior, and social inclusion and cohesion. We'll talk more about social inclusion and cohesion in tomorrow's session. Yes, and the three main features of youth work are a focus on young people, personal development, and voluntary participation. you can't push people to deliver your projects. You can't push people to participate. The only way is to motivate and to make sure that you keep the interest of people so that they can voluntarily participate in your activities. Of course, it's personal development, and of course, as I mentioned before, it has to be focused on young people. Unfortunately, we have still some 4 target groups that are less influenced by youth work. These young people are the ones who are in rural areas, young people with migrant background, young people from other minority groups, example LGBT community. Disadvantaged young people are the less influenced by youth work. Of course, we can talk a lot about that, why and the roots of this, because we can bring in the excuses that rural people are far, migrants, they don't know the language, how to include them, the advantaged people don't have opportunities, they can't, for example, reach youth houses, they can't actually do the work done because they have some mental or physical limits. But these are just excuses. In online world, I believe that our society can be very, very inclusive, and with the real partnerships built with government, with other youth organizations, with sponsorships, and we can influence on the, as youth workers, we can influence on the legitimacy and also on other laws which can push governments and also push other stakeholders to support these 4 target groups and to support youth workers to create more opportunities for these 4 groups of young people. And yes, and what actually is the role of youth work, youth workers, youth clubs, and youth organizations in the prevention of violent extremism and radicalization? First of all, I would like to give a short explanation of prevention. So prevention is an action or a set of actions designed to stop something before it actually occurs. Prevention is the action of stopping something from happening or arising, and prevention is the act of stopping something from happening or of stopping someone from doing something. So as you can see, it's 3 different sources of definition of prevention, but they all say about stopping something, about stopping something that happened before, and we don't want to repeat it again, or we don't want something to develop, and it's all about stopping. This is what it means to have to actually to prevent something, to stop something from happening. And as I mentioned before, there is different kinds of youth work. You could see that there is a detached youth work, there is group-based youth work, there is personal, peer-to-peer support youth work, and also there is open youth work. In the open youth work and the role of youth work in prevention of violent extremism, in prevention, so the term open youth work refers to enabling youth, meaning to give them the chance to act beyond the requirements of the adult world and the working environment. It's aimed at enabling self-expression and self-efficiency and creating an appreciative environment for youth to grow in. The following principles of open youth work gain significant importance when it comes to prevention of violent extremism. Of course, the first is openness. You have to be open to discussions. You have to be open to new ideas. You have to be open to new initiatives as a youth worker. You might not have a successful experience in the idea suggested or in the initiative that people are bringing up, but it doesn't mean that you should cut it off immediately. You should at least create an environment where people will feel that you are open for new ideas and you are open for new initiatives as a youth worker. So don't get stuck in the stereotypes and don't get stuck in the prejudice. Know the world of young people. It means You should know well the target you are working with. And you should know exactly what are their needs. So you can only build your work according to the needs of your target group. First, you need to know and define what is the world your young people are living in. Is it the world where they can't find a food, or the world where they can't find a place to sleep, or is that the world for them that they actually work at the age of 12 or 13, or the world that they have education on a daily basis, or is it the world where they have a concrete laws which support those target groups? So always know the world of young people you are working with. Have professional knowledge about issues that are important for young people. Professional knowledge, it can be some legal moments, it can be laws, it can be human rights, it can be as well some budgeting and finance part that you should be aligned with, and also psychological part, which is very important. So make sure that you are developing the skills, especially your listening skills that most of psychologists have. And if you don't have enough professional knowledge to assist someone, or if you don't have professional knowledge in helping in a psychological way, please don't have this, let's say, support, because sometimes this support can be wrong. So better try to approach professional, or try to make sure that these young people meet with professionals that you already know and you already talked, in order to help for these young people. Then next point is always judge the behavior, not the person. Because if you judge the person, you might get stuck in the personal issues. You might not like some behaviors, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't like the person or you shouldn't help this person. So we should always look into the fact that these people have different experiences, and they can be aggressive sometimes, they can be, let's say, mean, they can be afraid of you, or they can be scared of everything. So you should see that this is the behavior, this is not the person. Because we can never judge, we can never know what happened, what is the experience of this person. It occurs to everyone. It doesn't mean me or you or someone else. So this is a problem of prejudice. That sometimes we judge people and we don't look into their experiences, we don't look into their needs. So always judge the behavior, not the person. Then set the clear borders while respecting the person. Make sure that you are here as a youth worker, you are here to support, but also make sure that you as a youth worker don't get hurt in this process. Always have the discussions, have the debates, but make sure that there is a respect between you and this person. Even if you don't like some behaviors, even if you don't like some expressions being used by that person or initiatives, have a clear border, never get out of the control. Try to make sure that you have your emotions managed and you are not aggressive to these people. Create an open but also safe and constructive environment for dispute and discussion. So make sure you have the feedback-based approach, and you know what that means. The constructive feedback is always on place. Make sure that you don't put the negative stuff, but you make sure that people think that it's safe environment for them and they can be themselves. They can be actually who they are, and they can share with you or with other youth workers their real concerns. Have one's own clear and arguable political position and clearly express it. It can be not very familiar topic for a lot of young people, but yes, political views are important and you have to express it. And it doesn't mean that you judge someone else's opinion, or it doesn't mean that you don't like their opinion, but you can be clear and open for discussion when it comes to arguable political positions. Then keep in mind that prevention takes time and continuity. So we can't just stand up and say, okay, Now we have a new world with pinky, sunglasses where everything is fine and no one is stereotyped or no one is having prejudice towards other nations or countries or age groups or particular groups, doesn't matter. Always make sure that it will take time. So if you are a youth worker in this, in prevention of violent extremism, you have to have your guts and you need to have clear understanding that yes, we can fail as youth workers, and I have failed a lot before when it comes to prevention of violent extremism. I have been a victim myself, as I mentioned before, but it doesn't mean that I gave up, and doesn't mean that now I think there's nothing we can do. It's a slow process, and it takes time, but it's worth it. And in order for it to be sustainable, and in order to be for it continuous, we need to be patient and we need to be action oriented as young people. So I would like to share with you how part, and there is a 3-level prevention model that I would like to share with you, as you can see. So on the top is a generic prevention, then you see targeted prevention, indicated prevention, and then it's targeted prevention. So it's at each level of prevention, youth worker has to do different things. So I'm going to share with you, first of all, the definitions of each level, and then we'll move to how part. So definitions. Generic prevention usually targets all young people in an indirect way by equipping them with the life skills which contribute to their democratic resilience and thus strengthening their democratic values. So that's why you can see that on this module, it's on the top, because it has an indirect way, and it also has prevention of all young people. So it occurs to everyone. Indicated prevention targets young people who are already engaged in extremist group and want to drop out, or who are regarded as being open to receive support for dropping out. This work should only be provided by experts and youth workers who are especially trained for it. For example, if you never had this kind of trainings before that you are part of right now, it will be really hard for you to work with indicated prevention, because you need to be to have a lot of knowledge and also knowledge and also prepared psychologically and emotionally to make sure that you can actually work with this indicated prevention model because on this level young people are already involved, and you need to make sure that you are, as youth worker, prepared for any kind of reaction from their side. And the third level is the targeted prevention, which aims to reach young people who show tendencies towards or are interested in anti-democratic extremist ideologies or fragments of these ideologies and propaganda, are close to extremist groups or have already been in contact with such groups. So this is already targeted in a special way, in a special group that you're already familiar with. So you can identify the ideology and you identify the propaganda, or you're familiar with the propaganda they have done before, or they are currently involved in. And this is this, targeted level. You can see on the picture. And these are some tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you when it comes to the house and what actually youth worker can do at the generic level. So just to remind, this is the generic level. So at the generic level, the youth worker should be a friend, should be a mediator and facilitator when discussing topics you are not familiar with. Sometimes there is something that you might not know, but still at the generic level, it's fine on that level to mediate and facilitate some processes. It's not an indicated or targeted level because it's not yet so deep. So that's why even if you're not familiar with the topic, you can still facilitate and mediate it. You can discuss questions of meaning with young people in a safe environment. As I mentioned before, safe environment is a democratic environment where everyone has a voice and everyone is treated by democratic principles. And in that level, you should dare to discuss taboo topics. Taboo topics can be a sexual rape, it can be the situation with, for example, the Roma people, or it can be anything that actually can have a problem in opening the discussion, or people usually try to avoid these topics. So as a youth worker, you should dare to discuss these taboo topics. Then you tune into young people's reality. You can get this reality by talking to them, by discussing with them, by being a friend. And also you should know the trends and engage in the conversation. Sometimes the trends can be different from country to country, but most of the cases, because of the online world, you can catch the trends of young people, you can catch the trends of the target group you are working with. Enable young people to understand human rights and democratic values in practice. You can use Compass as a tool. You can use have your Say tool by Council of Europe. You can actually check it online. I can share the links with you later on. And you should know that human rights and democratic values in practice is the most important thing when it comes to prevention. People should know what is human rights. People should know what are their responsibilities as youth workers or as young people to stand for their human rights and also to be ambassadors of human rights. Yes, and also as a youth worker, you should be aware of your own values and implicit identity. You should make sure that you are aware of who you are. So when you talk to people, you cannot be afraid of your identity, or you shouldn't be, as a youth worker, you should share more opportunities, or you should share more of success stories that you have when it comes to be yourself, when it comes to understanding what are your values as a youth worker. Encourage intercultural and interfaith discussions which underscore the common values. So encourage the intercultural discussions where you can feel that some problems can occur. For example, you put together some problematic countries together and you ask them questions. You ask them how they feel to be in the same countries with the representative of a different nation. You ask these people, of course, it shouldn't be in an aggressive way. Everything should be in a safe environment. And this way you challenge people. Maybe this person has never met someone from this particular country or had never met someone from this particular religion. Ask them how do they feel to be in the same room with these people. Then, of course, you can make the best use of existing training opportunities on violent radicalization processes. You can, as a trainer, as a beginner trainer, or as a youth worker, you can always apply for different trainings, not just online, but also offline. And you can participate and get to know some other youth workers who work on the same topic and who actually can help you to get in the process. Provide positive narratives to counter extremist ideologies. Always bring arguments. Always bring positive stories, narratives in order to counter extremist ideologies. We should fight with them as youth workers. Otherwise, they will take over all young people in the world. So it's all about stories, and it's also about success stories and broken stereotypes. Try to use as many broken stereotypes as you can. Yes, and of course, inform young people of public anti-discriminatory networks. They should always see these networks online. They should can attend events by these networks. It can be some groups on Facebook. It can be some clubs. Try to share a lot via your social media, where you can help these young people to be part of anti-discriminatory networks. For example, you have a training with some people, We deliver the training, and you don't know what to do with these people. Create some Facebook group, or create some WhatsApp group, or WeChat group, whatsoever is active in your country or it's trendy in your country. Then you can involve as many volunteers as you can in your activities. So try to make sure that you are in touch with the young people you involve in your work. So this way they will never get to extremist ideologies, either they will never get to extremist groups, because they will be part of something more important and something more impactful that you as youth workers can provide for them. So this was all about the prevention on generic level, and this is the prevention on the targeted level. And this level, the youth worker should be aware about the social group he's working or she's working with. And there can be a lot of signs of radicalization in this group. So with targeted level, it's already level where the radicalization is happening right now. You should identify the signals. They can always be a cry for attention. For example, um, these signals can help you to identify if you should have more attention on this targeted group or not. Assess the signals correctly. A drastic change in the behavior or external appearance could be a signal that this young person undergoes a lot of changes or troubles inside. This is how you can target these people. You can see aggressive behavior, you can see a mean behavior, you can see emotional disbalance, you can see change in the way the young person wear the clothes, or in the way the young person is actually expressing opinion. Is it shouting? Is he crying? Is he trying to get a fight all the time? And you should work with the mindset of these young people. You should always involve them and bring them examples that can change their mindset, and they can change the way they think. As I mentioned before, this should be done by success stories, and this should be done by practical examples. And of course, you can, as a youth work, always build a trustful relationship before confronting the ideology. First, you shouldn't fight with these young people with their ideas before you actually build a relationship with them. So it's always about first informal and learning, and then it can be part of non-formal learning organized by you. Informal learning, it can be a movie. You can show a movie to these young people. You can tell a story for them. So it doesn't have to be organized in a way of training or campaign. It can be totally informal, that that young person wouldn't even feel that this is part of your agenda. It has to be a trustful relationship. You should be a friend with this targeted group of people. Um, and also always know the scenery of your area, know the scenery of what is next, and be ready to intervene on site. So be ready when you have to get in on the process and change something. And use peer education and activities to prevent young people from getting more involved in extremist circles. Why this is important? Because there might be a generation gap between youth worker and young people, and try to make sure that you involve a young person, young youth worker, in the process of building a trustful relationship. Because in the educational activities, it's better that you use peer-to-peer support, because peer-to-peer support is something that shouldn't be missing. People look at their peers as an examples, and they can take faster, and they can take over from them more success stories than they can take actually from the youth worker. So try to bring together a lot of young people who have success stories to tell, and try to make sure that they engage to each other practically. Find out about young people's motives and reasons for joining extremism. Develop support strategies and social alternatives. This is the way you can do by talking, and also by using the help of professionals or professional psychologists who can actually help you to get to know the motives and reasons for joining extremism. maybe these people were part of that targeted group that I mentioned before, that is less influenced by youth work. Maybe they never had an intention of youth work, and so that's why they were kind of put into extremism by some other influencing groups. Maybe the society has never accepted them, so that's why they became part of this extremism. So always try to see the motives and reasons of young people and develop support strategies and social alternatives according to user stories and according to the motives and reasons of young people you work with. Train on dynamics and process of violent radicalization and of propaganda, as well as on motives and attractions. You should have more and more practical experiences, as I mentioned before. With you can use the tools developed by specific expert groups for this target group. I can share some links with you below. You can see. And use social media to learn what is discussed among young people. And this is very important. Try to have as many friends on Facebook or Instagram or some other social media channels that you use, because the way they share, the way they behave, usually reflects their internal world. And usually these trends can help you to understand young people you are working with better. And social media is a great power. And sometimes when we have problems with budgeting, we can always use, webinars, and we can use online talks if we really want to get the work done, if we really want to impact the work we are doing, and actually not to lose the connection with the world. So use the social media and never forget about the power that it has. And of course, establish cooperation with other stakeholders. You need to have sponsors, you need to have governments you work with if you really want to influence on the way the youth work actually supports young people. And last but not least is the tips and tricks that I would like to give to you for the youth workers and the indicated level. So this level is a level where it's not targeted yet. So on that level, you still these young people are not radicalized yet. So you still can prevent it in a way that you can meet these public figures that you know and actually that are part of some extremist groups and might involve other young people to be part of their communities. So maybe you notice something which is not really democratic in the views they work, or maybe you notice something when it comes to the way these or that organizations operate or working. You can approach this organization, you can build trust, relationship with these young people, and see how they work. And be sure that you meet the challenges before you actually intervening into working with that young people and these extremist groups. Form alliance with key figures in the community. Make sure that, for example, some people, it can be famous people, it can be, for example, actors, it can be singers, it can be some people who have influence on others. So try to have a network of these people and build a stakeholder community that actually have more impact on the TV or on the media or on the social media. Those people are followed by more people that have more followers, not only live but also on social media. So use these people to prevent violent radicalization, because these people usually have more influence than youth workers have, because youth workers, for example, need time and trust to build a relationship with young people. But if there is a singer or important some figure living there, you can always use them to share and with you your vision of prevention violent extremism. They can share some videos, or they can share some photos with their participation that actually will have influence on the community you are part of. If they are part of some movie, for example, and they are famous, everyone is going to watch this movie. Everyone is going to join this campaign because this person is joining this campaign. So, and this is very important to have an indicated level. It's really important to have for alliance or network with key figures in the community you are part of as a youth worker. Approach the family, get to know the dynamics, and when necessary, seek the right person to get approval from before intervening into lives of these young people. Yes, maybe you need to talk to the family, maybe you need to talk to school or teachers just to understand the situation better, and then you can interfere. Yes, of course, you should understand the process, work on the causes, and develop alternatives. There should be always option A, B, sometimes C and D, because the way you choose sometimes will not work the way you want it to work. So you shouldn't give up, that's for sure, and you should always need to develop alternatives. If not this, then A, and if not A, then B, if not B, then C, and etc. And develop security protocols to ensure security for the young person and yourself. Of course, it means to make sure that you work with some other institutions and stakeholders, security councils, which can help you. For example, if you go to some group which you might think can have can influence bad on your health or impact bad on the health of the people around you, or they can actually commit a crime towards you. You should be prepared for that. So ask security, ask police to go with you. Don't work alone, because you need to have this security if you really want to work with these young people. Otherwise, you will get hurt, and then all the work you are doing will not have any sense. So make sure that you are secure, that you are insured before you actually go to intervene with young people, or just with a group of people. Maybe this young person can have something that can hurt you. It can be a knife, it can be some other tool you don't know about. So always have your back, always have a security with you. And of course, you should collaborate with experts from different sectors. As I mentioned, it can be healthcare, it can be group experts of psychology groups, it can be experts on law, it can be experts on youth work, and some other sectors. That you should always see the big picture. On the indicated level, it's always a lot of stakeholders involved. So try to make sure that you identify what are your stakeholders and what are the members, who are the members of your alliance, who are going to work with you and with whom you can actually consult when it comes to specific indicated level of the prevention. So I have some, in a nutshell, recommendations for you for different levels. At the generic level, the experts are focusing on ways for systematic cooperation between youth work and various stakeholders, such as formal education or welfare services. Suggestions are made on how to support youth workers and educators in general to deal with the newly occurring challenges. So on the generic level, this is something that is still occurring and it's not defined yet. So here, the expert groups that we were talking with, and also I was discussing and researching, they tell that on the generic level, you should always make sure that what kind of new challenges you can get on your way, and you should work with these newly created challenges. At a targeted level, the experts are highlighting the importance of establishing structural, long-lasting, sustainable partnerships between the youth sector and, among others, the formal education, social, health, and security sectors. Moreover, the experts call for the formation of networks at the national level where youth workers can seek advice, guidance, and support. And last but not least, the indicated level, the experts encourage a multi-stakeholder cooperation, as I was talking before, for tailor-made interventions for young people. At the same time, they invite the security sector to collaborate systematically with youth workers to maximize the preventive impact in a way in which the values of youth work are respected. Finally, the recommendations stress the need to provide specialized training along with the necessary resources and equipment to youth workers to meet the additional requirements at this level of prevention. So I was talking about this before. You can go back actually and see again what a youth worker can do on every level of prevention. You can do it later because, as I understand, we have short of time. And I'd like to give you more examples of existing experiences of youth work in prevention. And yes, there is actually, these practices are grouped into 5 categories. There are some practices that were reviewed by Council of Europe Youth Department, and they were actually published before. You can check them out on the website. You can just need to Google them. So, of course, we know that on the European level, there's a partnership on youth between European Commission and Council of Europe. And together they were working on the call, and actually this call was launched on the European level through online questionnaire, and 29 practices were submitted and on the basis of the above specified criteria. So 16 were selected for further analysis, and an additional 4 were identified through purposeful data collection. So there are some practices that are most impactful according to the research and call of Council of Europe and European Commission. And they were financed and actually implemented. And some of them are still on the process. These practices are grouped into 5 categories. As we talked before, that peer education is really important for prevention, and this is top 5. Then it comes to online campaigns and digital media. Then it's cooperation with other stakeholders. Then it's, of course, providing opportunities as youth organizations, and of course, organizing educations and trainings for the target group we are working with. So for more information, you can always visit the link below. You can see these practices, and actually there are some contacts that you can get when you click on the link. One of the examples of the prevention of violent extremism is the No Hate Speech campaign movement from the Council of Europe. It was set up in 2013, and actually in April, there was a closing conference and also reporting conference of Council of Europe on No Hate Speech campaign movement. And you can see more information about No Hate on the link in the presentation. Then these links I will put in the comments, so you can actually download some documents, or you can actually have a look. So here we have some practices from Netherlands and also from Germany, and you can have their contacts here. I'm not going to discuss more, deeply about the practices. You can always read them yourself. There is a joint initiative by Germany, Romania, and Belgium, and this project have gathered more than 130 stories across Europe, and they were sent via postcards to members of European Parliament. And a lot of participants of this actually project was of the seminars, joint seminars, were given the tools and knowledge in order to better understand their human rights, and actually particularly the issue of equality, gender, and minority rights. This was quite impactful project, and if you really want to have a look and get more information, you can get this on the link, and this presentation will be shared with all the participants after this module ends. Yeah, and there are some examples of online youth work. As I said, there's different classes of youth work. There's open youth work, detached youth work, and also there's online youth work. And this is social media as an example. which influences a lot on the prevention. And actually, No Hate has also had a lot of impact, a lot of campaigns on social media, which can be considered also part of online youth work. There are some examples of online youth work. You can see it here in Austria, France, Ireland, and some other countries across the globe. So this was the presentation, and this will be shared with you. And actually, you can get later more time to watch the video that I've also shared with you. This is a very impactful video that I have seen for the last, let's say, couple of years. These stories are taken directly from the lives of young people representing Muslim minority in Austria. And this was created by the support of youth workers and other experts. And also this is a produced series of videos which tell the story of Jamal, a youngster who is a fictional youngster. He's not a real story. He represents, all Muslim community as a fictional character who fled from his country and to Austria as a child, and he discusses the frustration and the experiences he had because of his Islamic identity and the problems he has faced. I definitely recommend you to watch this video when you have time. And I will also invite you to later on go to the quiz and actually to fill in the quiz as a part of what you have learned during this module 3. Also, if you have questions, I'm ready to get some questions from your side. You can ask them in the comments. Okay, great. I think no one has questions for now. Then I will say thank you for your time, and I hope to see you tomorrow for the next module, which we're going to talk about resilience and empowerment of young people in fighting the prevention and working for actions which are determined by young people and for young people. Thank you so much.